So for this week on Cyber School, we're going to talk about our mirroring switches. We've talked about these, in a grouping with our general, VoIP switches that we have, or really just network switches. But they're a pretty popular peripheral, and we've been getting some questions on them through our support group. So I figured, this would be just a quick little session we could do to kind of talk about the mirroring switches and, what they do and how to use them. So first and foremost, they're a small little three-port switch. They give you a small little capability. Basically, you can split, one, gigabit Ethernet port into two. So really convenient in a situation where you need to plug in two devices and you've only got one drop. And of course, the nice thing with it is they are a full gigabit rated switch, so you get that full kind of capability out of it. You're not degrading your connection capability by, connecting to say, 100 megabit connection or anything. It's full gigabit speed. But the nice thing, since this is the mirroring variant, it will monitor all of the traffic from a single port. Essentially, one of the ports is put into what's known as promiscuous mode, and it will basically mirror all of that traffic to another port. Of course, one of the ports is your data uplink, that connects to the rest of your network. So all of the traffic from one port is mirrored to the other. So that way you can see exactly what's going on. And this can be useful in a couple different scenarios. But first, let's talk about what options we have. Of course, they're available in two different options. We've got a USB powered variant and then a PoE powered variant. The USB variant is really just a small little switch. It's used to, do specific monitoring. I like to use it in front of a switch to get all the traffic that comes off the switch. So it can be really useful for monitoring a couple devices at a single time. But of course, since it's powered over USB, you're not going to be getting PoE power with it or anything like that. Or if you're working with, a non-PoE style device, something that, has, an old AC wall wart or something that you can actually plug in to supply power, it's absolutely perfect for something like that. But if you are working with something that does require PoE, which is becoming more and more common, the PoE variant might be useful. This one, of course, can take both standard PoE and PoE plus, so up to, proper 25 watts, unless you've got a injector that can do up to proper 30 watts, for a whole bunch of power, but it can work with either standard PoE or PoE plus. And of course, it does pass through that PoE capability. So if you've got two devices that need PoE to be powered, you can do that and power both. It sniffs just a couple watts off the top to be able to run and be able to power both connected devices with it. Granted, most of the time when people use this, you're connecting to one device that requires PoE, and your device that's going to be, receiving all that mirrored traffic probably doesn't. It's probably going to be your laptop. I find these really useful in situations where you're trying to mirror the traffic coming off a specific device that might not be provisioning correctly or is just behaving incorrectly, and you can't get access to the actual network to do a traditional port mirror by locking into the switch and mirroring the traffic that way. You can just plug this guy in line and be able to do it that way. So some specifics about these units. Of course, these are both going to be what are commonly known as in the industry as dumb switches. They don't have an IP address that you can go to for specific configuration. You plug them in and they just act like a switch. They do support, of course, VLAN packet forwarding. So if you've got any VLAN configurations on the devices that they're connected to, they can relay that up the chain, as well as jumbo packet support, which is super useful for different situations where you need to be able to send pretty big packets. It is also 802.3x compliant, so all those different certifications will be covered there. And since this is kind of a dumb switch and it just gets power when it's powered, it's got volatile memory on it. So if you're worried about anything that could be sensitive, could be stored in the unit when it's powered off, it's got volatile memory, so nothing to worry about there. And of course, that full gigabit speed that I was mentioning. So when you're setting up something like this, and the setup is going to be exactly the same, whether it's our PoE variant or our USB variant. You've basically got one connection, which is going to be your rightmost port, your port number one. That's going to be your upstream connection. That's going to connect to the rest of your network. And in this case of our PoE variant shown here, that's going to also supply your PoE power. In our middle port there, port number two, that's the device that you want to mirror the traffic from. Whatever you plug into the middle, that's where you're going to be mirroring the traffic. That's going to be mirroring the traffic to port number three. Generally, that's going to be, some kind of a laptop or a regular desktop computer that's going to be running some kind of network capture tool, predominantly Wireshark. So that way you can go and monitor all of the traffic that comes in and out through that specific device that's going to be plugged into port number two. So, are these actually useful? Can you use these guys? Well, it really depends. These are super niche products that are really only useful in certain situations. The majority of the time, you're not really going to want to mirror your traffic, and probably 95% of the time, you don't need to mirror your traffic. It's when you're trying to troubleshoot something, you're kind of an engineer, and it's just more convenient for you than instead of doing, say, a proper port mirror, just by setting up, a regular mirroring switch, so that way you can just capture all the traffic automatically on a hardware level. So it's a little bit easier to work with, which is why I find these are a little bit better suited for engineers and definitely for field service techs. If you're out there and you're installing the, different equipment for various companies, and you might not have access to their, network infrastructure that's managed by a different company, then you talk to your customer and, you want to get access to your network. Oh, well, they, outsource that. You got to contact another company and come back another day. Well, if you have something like our PoE variant in your tool bag, you can just plug that in line, still supply power to that device you're trying to troubleshoot, and be able to mirror all the traffic without having to get a third party involved. So it can be super versatile in situations like that. But for more engineers, people that, are kind of working on equipment that's more stationary, you don't have to really move around very much. USB variant might be more useful in situations like that. And also, just port mirroring can be kind of complicated to configure and set up. It can require, a little bit of know-how to be able to log into your switch, know, which specific port you're trying to mirror and where you're trying to mirror that port traffic to. So, having a device that you can basically just plug in line and it's dumb can be really convenient in some situations. So, with that, that is a kind of brief synopsis on how our network switches or mirroring switches work and how you can use them.
Thank you for watching this edition of Cyber School. If you have any questions, please get in contact with our sales department. They are available by email at sales@cyberdata.net or by phone at 831 373 2601 extension 334. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this from CyberData.